أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى يوم الدين. Assalamu alaykum ya Abu Abdullah. It is a pleasure being here again, alhamdulillah. It's been a while. And tonight I would like to send my condolences for, of course, the month of Muharram, and specifically the 25th of Muharram, which was today, for the martyrdom of Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein alayhi salam, the fourth Imam of the 12 Imams. There are some narrations that talk about the 12th. Some communities, like in Iran, they usually remember the 12th of Muharram, but also there's narrations for the 25th. In other communities, they remember the 25th. But regardless, it is the month of Muharram and Safar, and the caravan of Imam Hussein alayhi salam is traveling. They're taking them as captives. So regardless, what we have in history is they're taking them from Karbala to Kufa, and around this time from Kufa to Sham. So it is a time of, regardless of remembering Imam Sajad, is a time of hardship for him. As mentioned in some of the Maqtal, when asked about the hardships of Karbala, he would say, Asham, 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 meaning Syria. And what befell in Syria, that part where they took the caravan of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and the family of Imam Hussein was presented in front of Yazid, the Khalifa, and the abuse that they had there. They would take them and parade them like, slaves and captives in the aswaq, in the bazaar, in the marketplace. Imam Sajad gave a remarkable speech there. He gave a very powerful speech in Sham, and he's remembered as one of the great Imams that, if you look at his time period, I want you to look at history a little bit with more depth. Look at this 250 years of imamate. If you calculate, the Prophet of Islam, when he passed away, and the 10th of Hijri is around, it's 10 years, 11 years is when the Prophet of Islam passed away. We had 250 years of imams that were present in society. If you subtract, 260, which is the year 260 was the year that Imam Hassan Askari alayhi salam was martyred, and it is the beginning of the imamate of Imam Mahdi, and the ghaiba started. This year, you calculate 250 years of imamate, of successorship, infallibles that had knowledge of God, elected by God, and had, of course, were sinless. Let's examine, these 250 years of how the Imams saved Islam. We need to know this because they truly saved Islam. The Islam that we have today is from the work of our 12 Imams. And how many years of this 250 years? So I don't want you to get confused. Remember, the 10th year is when the Prophet passed away, 10th, 11th. You have 250 years, 260. Imam Ali alayhi salam's imamat lasted, you talk about imamat, not age. Imamat lasted to the 40th after Hijri. So he had about 30 years of imamat, right? Of being the imam, in charge, 30 years. Then you had Imam Hassan for about 10 years. Imam Hussein for about 11 years. Then from all this, you had a long period, 34 years, that Imam Ali ibn Hussein alayhi salam was the imam. So if you can calculate all this in terms of the infallibles, so far he has been given the longest amount of imamate, from the other imams. So what was the time like? What was it like during the time of Imam Sajad? I want you to think about it. It's very important for us to analytically examine history. Karbala happens. His imamate starts when? The day of Ashura, because he's now the Imam. He miraculously comes and he buries the body of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. After 3 days and 3 nights that Imam Hussein's body and the shuhada were there, he identifies them. Because when the tribe came, they couldn't even identify who was who, because they took the holy heads and they left the bodies. They couldn't identify them. So Imam Ali ibn Hussein comes and identifies and buries Imam Hussein alayhi salam. At such a time that it begins with his being a captive and going back to Medina, and the pressure that the Yazidi government comes, and the attack of Medina again a year later, around a little bit time afterwards of Medina, you see that Imam Zainul Abidin was in immense pressure, because many of the companions and the true followers of Ahlul Bayt were martyred. Because if they were good, they went to Karbala. So imagine losing the best, the Imam, his family, and also the best of the best. Some of the narrations say that the Shia, the followers of Ala Muhammad, were only a handful during that time. Only a handful. So what did Imam Zain al-Abidin do in this 34 years that rejuvenated the Shia, the followers of Ahlul Bayt, and gave life again to them, made them powerful, so that Imam Baqir and Imam Sadiq come and they teach and they have so many students? What he did was very effective. And tonight, the topic that we are choosing is, how did Imam Ali ibn Hussein alayhi salam not lose hope? Because when it comes to the Shia, there's devastation. And how did he not lose hope when you have only a handful left? When you are crying. In some of the traditions, Imam Sadiq says that Imam Zain al-Abidin cried 40 years. This might be rounding up, say for example. Around 34, 40 years that he was continuously crying. In Shia sources and Sunni sources. I was reading a narration in Hilyatul Awliya, which is a Sunni source, that talks about Imam Zain al-Abidin crying so much, and they would ask him, why are you crying so much? And he gives a beautiful answer that Prophet Jacob, Yaqub, cried for about 20 years. We have in narrations about 20 years for his son, Prophet Yusuf. 20 years Prophet Yaqub cried for Joseph, Yusuf, when he knew he was alive. He knew Yusuf was alive. He missed him. He was worried about him. 20 years until what happened to Prophet Yaqub? He became blind. He says, now, but you can understand what Imam Zain al-Abidin went through when he saw the martyrdom of Imam Hussein. Prophet Yaqub missed. He knew Yusuf was alive. He cried for 20 years. But Imam Zain al-Abidin, in front of him, everything that we read and we cry, we hit ourselves. We do daj'a. Daj'a means to yell, to hit ourselves, to do lutam, hit our face, hit our heads. This is all from reading. Imam Zain al-Abidin saw this all. So therefore he uses and explains that Prophet Yaqub cried 20 years, cried for Prophet Yusuf for so many years, but in front of me, my father was martyred. So what did Imam Zain al-Abidin do not to lose hope? Dear brother and sister, this Muharram I've been giving discussions about hope, being hopeful in Islam. This was the topic that I chose this Muharram. I wasn't, here you had a better speaker than me to speak to you. But I was speaking about a topic that I think is very needed in the youth, in Muslims, non-Muslims in the West. And that is the topic of not losing hope, the topic of despair. If you look around us and you look at some of the statistics, you see that some of the deaths, They call them deaths of despair. What are these deaths of despair? One is alcohol usage. They drink so much, despair, they die. One is drug addiction, overdose. The other is suicide. Deaths of despair are increasingly rapidly in this country. People are sad. People are losing hope. They're turning to addiction. They're turning to drugs. They're turning to alcohol. They're turning to, suicide. But why should mankind be like this when we have a Rabb and Lord that is so kind and compassionate to us? Shouldn't we be hopeful? Shouldn't you be hopeful when you have such a caring God? And the answer to all of this, in short, is because we haven't understood God. And I want to give you the example of Imam Zain al-Abidin, who nobody in this world had a test like him. Nobody saw in this world what he saw. But yet he never lost hope and was actually very successful in what he did. And he preserved the Shia. And he brought forth so many different people. I'll talk about some of the strategies that Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam did. But the main thing that I want you to understand from him is the way that he viewed God. The way that he viewed his Rabb caused him never to lose hope. Dear brother, dear sister, would you admit that we have not understood God? We say we've worshipped him in our salat, our prayer. If we truly knew God, I'm talking about myself, I wouldn't pray this way. I wouldn't pray this way. If you truly loved God, if you truly knew God, you would never lose hope. You would never have huzn, never have grief. You would never have fear. The problem with us is that we have not understood God. Look at Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam. In the way that he worshipped God, this was the key to his success. I'm going to give you a few instances. Let's recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad ya Muhammad wa ajil faraj. Shaykh Mufid, Kitab al-Irshad, says that once Imam Abu Ja'far Muhammad Baqir alayhi salam visited his father Imam Zain al-Abidin Ali ibn al-Husayn alayhi salam, alayhim salam, and he said that Imam Sajad had reached an unprecedented state of worship. One of his titles is, the adornment, the jewel of the worshippers. Imam Baqir, the fifth Imam, sees the fourth Imam in a completely unprecedented state of worship. He said his color was pale. This is the Imam Zain al-Abidin that was so strong, that had hope, because he had hope in God. His color was pale. He kept waking up all night. His eyes were sore from weeping so much. His forehead and nose were bruised from prolonged sajda, the prolonged prostrations of Imam Zain al-Abidin. His feet and ankles were swollen from standing and doing salat. I don't know if you've stood in one area at one time, the feet swell without moving. Staying in such a way, in some of the traditions it talks about he would pray. Each garden and date tree he would have, each tree he would pray 2 units of prayer. 2 units of prayer every day, 2 units. His body would sway back and forth in the wind, how much he would pray. Here, it's interesting, Imam Baqir alayhi salam comes to him and says, I wept out of compassion. I saw the swollenness, the prostration, the marks. His son says, I began to cry in this narration. I began to cry. How can somebody worship God so much? How can somebody, he felt sorry for him in a way. He's out of compassion. And you see complete humility. This is the most important part, I think, in this story. Is that a lot of times we pray, we do worship, and we get a little arrogant. We like to show off a little bit. We come, for example, imagine right now, seriously, if you worshiped God all night, and you would come and see people that pray their salat and it's qada, or it becomes late, or they don't pray on time, and you're worshiping God in your eyes, you would say, God, I am the best creation that you have. Look at me. Look at them. Psh, they don't know what they're doing. Look at me. You got to learn from me. You will start becoming arrogant. It's very natural. That's one of the afat of worship, is that you become arrogant, unless it's done properly. That's why some of the teachers that do a lot of students that do a lot of worship, the teacher says don't do too much worship unless you have a teacher. So Imam Zayn al-Abidin gives this answer because the Imam's worship is true worship. True worship is what brings you towards humbleness. And when an Imam is sincere, a scholar is sincere, they're more humble. They worship God more, they're more humble. There he says this, he says, the worship of Ali ibn Abi Talib, alayhi salam, you have not seen the worship of Ali. And describes that the ibadat of Ali ibn Abi Talib was, something that you cannot compare my worship to his. His worship was much more. The humbleness of Imam Zayn al-Abidin. I think this is nothing compared to how Imam Ali alayhi salam worshipped Allah. So, brother and sister, if you want to be hopeful, if you want your life to change, it is the way that you view God. It is your relationship with Him. That if you have that ittisal and connection with Him throughout the day, throughout your life, nothing can ever break you. Nothing could ever get you down. Nothing could ever get you upset. In a way, you become invincible. Nothing can shatter you. You become the strongest of people. And this is one of the important conversations we have is, what does Islam do for you? It produces the strongest, most resilient of people. That nothing can break them. Why? Because they only look at their relationship with God, what pleases Him. If we have time, we'll mention some of the prayers of Imam Zayn al-Abidin, du'as that he has. Who has heard of As-Sahifa As-Sajadiyya? The 15th munajat in this beautiful book of Imam Zayn al-Abidin is the munajat of the Rajin, those that have Raja. Very short, we'll go over a little bit of how much hope. This is Imam Zayn al-Abidin. How much hope does he have with God after all his family members have been martyred? How does somebody remain so hopeful? What is the key so far? That relationship with God, how you view God. Let me give you some examples. When you look at verses of Quran, the Quran mentions 41:23. وَذَلِكُمْ ظَنَّكُمُ الَّذِي ظَنَنْتُمْ بِرَبِّكُمْ أَرْضَاكُمْ فَأَصْبَحْتُمْ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. And that was your assumption, which you assumed about your Lord. It has brought you to ruin, and you have become among the losers. Some of the khasirin, those that have lost, the losers, the reason for their loss, the Quran says their failure, was because of their dhanantum bi rabbikum, how they viewed their Lord. They viewed their Lord in a negative way. People are like that. Many people that they become atheists, it's not necessarily that the proof of God's existence is weak. It's very strong in philosophy, theology. There's so many proofs. It's because something happens in their personal life they cannot explain. They pray to God and it doesn't get answered, then they say God doesn't exist. They don't know that God is delaying it. There's a reason why. There's hikmah, there's wisdom. You're talking about God that is the creator of the entire universe, designing the entire universe with how complex it is. And you think just because I don't understand something, therefore God is weak, God is unwise, He doesn't know what He's doing. Of course He knows what He's doing. He's Rabbul Alameen. Just go and look at, study space a little bit. See how far, for example, the sun, which is, for us takes about 8 minutes, the speed of light, for it to reach us. 8 minutes, right? For the sunlight to reach us around. After the sun, the closest star takes 4 years for it to reach us. 4 years for the light to come. That means you're looking at 4 years of history. That's the closest star. Now, what about the farthest star, which is about, say, 24 billion years? 24 billion years, 25 that we've found. And the entire star maybe only exists for 10 billion years. It's already gone, exploded, It's not a star anymore. You're just seeing 25 billion years of history. And you're saying that Lord doesn't understand. He doesn't know what he's doing. All of this goes back to because we haven't understood God. And that is what a person becomes an arif. What does arif, irfan mean in Arabic? It means he knows God. It's not something very complicated. It means that they live their lives in a way they have understood God. Imam Zayn al-Abidin was an arif. He understood God, and because of understanding God, he never lost hope. There's a beautiful tradition from the 8th Imam, Imam Rida alayhi salam, that he actually gives a nice formula and is one of the secrets of life. Do you want God to treat you well? Do you want God to be very kind to you? View God in a kind way. View God as being merciful. View God in a positive way, and he will be kind to you. Do you want God to be evil to you? The tradition says. View God in an evil way, in an incomplete way, and it will happen to you. The tradition is this. أحسن الظن بالله. The narration says, make good your view of God, your assumption of God. Make it good. Be hopeful. Always remind yourself of God. When you read the Quran and du'as, it changes your opinion about God. فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ يَقُولُ أَنَا عِنْدَ الظَّنِّ عَبْدِ الْمُؤْمِنِ بِي إِنْ خَيْرًا فَخَيْرًا. I am with that assumption that my slave has towards me. If it is khair, if it is good, they will see khair, they will see good. Why do you think this is so? Why do you think if our assumption in God is good, then we see good? Because God will never let us down. If we're nobody, a little kid comes to us and has hope in me. It says, I know, for example, you will buy me ice cream. I know you will give me $5. You will never say, okay, you believe, you trust me? Okay, let me hear you. Here's your ice cream, we won't let him down because now we see that he has viewed me in a positive way. So if you view God in a positive way, you will just see positive because he will not let you down. فَإِنْ خَيْرًا فَخَيْرًا وَإِنْ شَرًّا فَشَرًّا. But if it is evil, say, God, you're evil, God. What are you doing? God, you're just bothering me all the time. Everything becomes evil for you. Everything becomes torturous for you. You're just harming yourself. Nothing is happening to God. So we see over and over changing our assumption, changing our view of God. That is what is going to give us that hope that we need. A person during the time of Prophet Musa alayhi salam, this prophet in tradition in Safinatul Bahar said, God, show me the best of creation. Show me who's the best. And for Prophet Musa alayhi salam, an address came. Moses, he went to a specific place and he saw a person. That this is God's best creation. Obviously not as high as Musa alayhi salam because he's a prophet. But say the next would be this person. And he notices that this person isn't really high when it comes to spirituality. Doesn't do anything special. Maybe I came to the wrong place. But then he sees, this guy is sick. Leprosy is a skin disease. He's also crippled. He's unable to walk. 2 major diseases that, God forbid, if anyone had, it would be a disaster. 2 of these. And then in the tradition, it has that now Gabriel comes, and now is going to give him another test. And is going to take away his vision. Now he can't see anymore either. And you see that this person, he viewed God so positively. 3 major tests of health. And he says this in the tradition, it has مَتَعْتَنِي بِهِمَا حَيْثُ شِئْتَ وَسَلَّبْتَنِي إِيَّاهُمَا حَيْثُ شِئْتَ. You gave me the pleasure, you enjoyed me with seeing however you wanted. God, you gave me eyes, I saw. Now you're going to take it, you took it away from me, however you wanted. Okay, you gave me vision, you gave me blindness, you did that. وَأَبْقِيَتْ لِي فِيكَ طُولَ الْأَمَلِ يَا بَارُ يَا وَصُولُ. But what remains in me is طُولَ الْأَمَلِ. Amal here means hope. My vision is gone, but my hope remains to you, bar and wasul. It talks about God being good, bir, He's doing good to me. Imagine, God forbid, a test like that for anyone that would happen, and instead they call God the one that does good. So this person, because of the trials and tests that he had, that God gave him the position of one of the best of creation, even though he didn't necessarily worship Allah the most. But he viewed God very positively. And he knew that whatever good came from him is from God. And if God takes away his vision, that's from God. But I still have hope for you. So is there a way that we can change the way that we view God? Is it in a way that we can be as hopeful as the Imams were when it comes to God? We can be an optimist, we can be positive. I'm going to be ending tonight's discussion with more about Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam and what he did. So the Imam, he does three things. He has hope, he has trust in God, but he does three things at that time where it's completely, we said, the followers of Ahlul Bayt were martyred and there's only a few left. One is that through prayer, he has as an Imam obligation to teach people. Maybe he cannot teach like Imam Baqir and Imam Sa'd on the pulpit where everyone can listen because the Umayyads were in charge and they were very strict on Imam Sajad. But he begins to teach people through supplication, through dua. As-Sahifa Sajadi is full of the fundamental beliefs of unity of God, of prophethood, of imamat, of the hereafter, with prayer. He would make prayer dua, and they would write this or they would save this, and it became in a way that it's reached us now. In many countries, they come and they read this Sahifa, they're amazed by it, how rich it is. So you cannot teach, you cannot, in that way, but you find another solution when you are hopeful. And you teach in a way that people, the government at that time does not threaten your life at that time, and you teach the people through supplication, through dua. The same, objective is gained. The other thing that the Imam did was interesting is that he would approach former slaves, people that were in society maybe the weakest of society. And maybe when it comes to maybe prominent people, they would watch and observe the Imam. But he would come to those that were oppressed or had a harsh life, and he would come and teach them about Islam. He would sometimes purchase slaves with the intentions of setting them free. Purchase them because slavery, existed at that time. It wasn't, a racial thing. It was, over armies that they would conquer, empires that they would conquer at that time. Even a lot of the slaves at that time were sometimes Persians, for example. And he would take them, some of them, and he would purchase them and begin to teach them, educate them, and then set them free. Maybe hundreds that he did this to these. So the population of the Shia increased with these slaves that he taught himself. The third thing you see sometimes in secret, some say this, I can't say all scholars say this. Some have the opinion that when Mukhtar al-Thaqafi came and he took revenge on the killers of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, some say it was with the secret permission of Imam Zainul Abidin that Mukhtar did this. Some say this. So very secretly, at the same time getting, permission and, smiling when the head or some of the, people that were killed, like Harmala, for example, other people that were very cruel and treacherous oppressors that they killed even the 6-month-old son of Imam Hussein. That in this way he would somehow give a green light to them. Some agree with this. So you see that the conclusion is that Imam Zayn al-Abidin, with the time period he had, because he had hope, he was very successful in protecting Islam. And not only that, he also taught many other people as well in spreading Islamic knowledge. At the end, I want to show you the Imam making this munajat, the 15th dua in Munajat al-Rajin, which is called the whispered prayer of the hopeful. If you have time, look at it, review it. Look, this is how long it is. If you can see it from here, a few lines, maybe 20 lines or something like that. Very few lines, but it's called Munajat al-Rajin. In the way that after all these virtues, we're talking about Imam Zayn al-Abidin, how he worshipped God, how he would talk to him. Remember, after the time of calamity, this is after Karbala, from what I know, how he talks to God. I'll give you some of the lines of it. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ya man idha sa'alahu abdun a'ta. O he who gives to a servant who asks from him. Takes him, so God is the God that gives, the first thing. I speak to you, God, the God that gives. When a servant asks, you give it to him. That's why you talk to God, because you believe he's going to give. You're hopeful, right? Takes him to his wish when he expectantly hopes for what is with him. Takes him to his wish when he expects it. Remember, when you have that positive assumption or positive outlook with God, if you trust in him, he will give it to you. That's actually one of the conditions of prayer, is to have certainty that God will answer it. Not to have doubt that he's going to answer it. I'm certain that he hears it. Brings him near and close when he approaches him. When somebody comes to God, Imam Zayn al-Abidin says, God comes close to him. See how much hope this dua is, full of hope. It's actually called the hopeful prayer. If you ever are down, look at this prayer. Covers over his sin. The God that covers our sin is Sattarul Uyub, covers our sin and cloaks it when he shows it openly. When the slave shows it openly, God covers it. Doesn't allow other people to see. Doesn't even want you to talk about it. Because you have honor and dignity. Don't ruin your reputation and tell people what you used to do. Don't do this. God covers it. And he satisfies and suffices him when he has confidence in him. وَإِذَا تَوَكَّلَ عَلَيْهِ أَحْسَبَهُ وَكَفَى. When he has tawakkul. Tawakkul means you truly rely on God. You say, God, you're going to fix this problem I have. When you rely on him, Imam Sajad says, he is the God that will suffice you. Brother and sister, do you need a stronger God, a more powerful God, that you don't trust in him as much? Do you need a wiser God? Do you need a more compassionate God? Why do we not think that he is enough? And why do we have more hope in people than in God? My God, who is the one who has come before you seeking hospitality, and whom you have not received with hospitably? Who is the one who has dismounted at your door, hoping for magnanimity, and to whom you have not shown it? So whoever comes to your door, you have answered their prayers. Whoever seeks your hospitality, you have given them hospitality. It is good that I come back from your door, turned away in disappointment. Is it good that I come towards you and I come back with disappointment? While I know of no patron, no mawla, no lord, no patron, qualified by benevolence but you. كيف أرجو غيرك والخير كله بيدك. How should I have hope in other than you, when good, all of it is in your hand? All of good is in God's hand. Why would I go to somewhere else? وكيف أأمل سواك والخلق والأمر لك. How should I expect from others when you are the creation and for you is the creation and the command? How can I go to other one? For example, I have a problem, I go to this doctor, I go to this guy to get a loan, I go to him, but all of this creation and all of the command is yours. Doesn't mean, I'm not saying to not seek the conventional methods, because seek it. But the hope shouldn't be there, because all of this isn't God's commands. Should I cut off my hope for you when you have shown me of your bounty, that for which I have not asked? How can I lose hope, this line is saying, in you, when you have given me and I didn't even ask for things? How many things right now can you mention that you have that you never asked for in your life? Did you ask for everything, then get it? Or did God just already give it to you and you didn't ask? Many things. Every day, did you pray to be healthy and you are healthy? Every day, when you get for example, your paycheck or your sustenance, did you really ask for it, all of it every day? Or did it just keep coming and He keeps taking care of you and taking care of you? So if you're such a Lord that you take care of me without even me asking, then how can I lose hope in you? And now I'm asking, so of course you're going to give me more. So I think that's enough for tonight, but there's a few other lines, I'll just read. I'll skip. كيف أنساك ولم تزل ذاكري. How should I forget you while you never cease remembering me? How can I forget you, God, while you never forget me? If you ever think you forget God, remember He's always remembering you. Is He or not? He's remembering us. Ya khayra marju, O best object of hope. Ya man babahu maftuhun lida'iya'i, O he whose door is open to his supplicators. So this is part of the dua of Imam Zayn al-Abidin. Some of the lines, and maybe a few of them I read, that we understand that how much hope he had, and we said that his success was due to his hope in God, and that his hope was due to his favorable opinion of God, and that would cause him to be invincible, that would cause him to never falter, never to be weak. And dear brother and dear sister, if we really learn from the Imams, the whole purpose of this is to apply it in our own lives. If you can be a little bit more hopeful, you think about how much better your life will be. If you're a little bit more hopeful, how much more calmness you'll have, how much more ease will you have, how much better your life will be, how much more comfort you'll have. So the problem lies in us not understanding God as He is, and hopefully Allah can give us a little bit of this ma'rifat of Allah so that we can understand Him how He truly is. Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam was one of the people that are listed in history of the main criers, people that continuously cried. And when you look at mourning for Sayyid al-Shuhada, in the Quran it says to have love of the family of the Holy Prophet of Islam. True, we have love, and that's why Shia and Sunni, they should remember Imam Hussein, because Quran says to have love and mawadda and attachment to the family of the Prophet. But if ever asked, why do you mourn for so long? Why do you mourn for 40 nights to Arba'in? One of the answers is Imam Zayn al-Abidin would cry for around 30 years. And you Shia and Sunni, you both accept Ali ibn Hussein to be the most knowledgeable. We accept him as Imam, but Sunnis, you accept him to be the most knowledgeable. So therefore, prolonged and continuous crying for Imam Hussein is the seerah and sunnah of Imam Zayn al-Abidin. Biggest proof we have to cry for him for so long is because of Imam Zayn al-Abidin. If we can dim the lights and we'll get prepared for the musibah of Imam Zayn al-Abidin. They say that sometimes they would see water flow and water stop flowing from a gutter. Water flow and water stop flowing. And they're wondering, why is this? And they look and they see that it was Imam Sajad getting wudu, getting ablution. But whenever he came to look at the water, and he would remember that his father died in thirst, the son of Rasulullah, the son of the Prophet of Islam, his grandson, died with thirst, he would drop and spill the water. He would begin to cry. Imam Zayn al-Abidin, for years, he cried for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So much so that we said, they asked him, why do you cry so much? Because, dear brother and sister, we read the maqtal of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. You read it in books 1400 years later. But he saw, what is he seeing in Kufa right now? He's seeing that Ibn Ziyad is taking the head of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, the blessed head, and playing with sticks on the head of Imam Hussein. He would see this, and therefore he is remembering this. And some of the companions of the Prophet of Islam would tell Ibn Ziyad, what are you doing? I swear I saw with my own eyes. I swear I saw with my own eyes that Rasulullah kissed those lips that you're playing with a stick. Those are the lips that Rasulullah would kiss. Inna ilayhi raji'un. We'll have musibah and matam for Imam Hussein alayhi salam, inshallah. Keep us in your dua. That's it.
آسمان هم خجل است، چشم تو و بارانت امام سجاد. آسمان هم خجل است، چشم تو و بارانت. آخری نیست بر این گریه بی پایانت. آب میبینی و طفل و گل و سقا و جوان بیشتر میشود انگار غم پنهانت. زر هرچند که یک روز به دادت آمد، تو 40 سال به لب آمده هر شب جانت. حسین جان، شب شهادت امام سجاد علیه السلام. حسین جان، غیر زینب چه کسی درد تو را میداند، که چه آورد خرابه به دل ویرانت. سخت سوزان دلت را غم آن جسم کبود، خواهرت بود که جان داد روی دامانت. قربانت برم آقا، زخمی بزم شراب است دلت بی خود نیست، که 40 سال نکرد اشک دوا درمانت. خیزران خیزران تا که به دستان کسی میبینی درد میگیرد ناگاه لب و دندانت حسین جان بی حاجت نباشید حسین جان جان یا حسین 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 تشریف بیارید جلو تشریف چند دقیقه به احترام آقا امام سجاد علیه السلام در خدمت یا حسین 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 من شمس ولا و مه بی مثل و قرینم من شمس ولا و مه بی مثل و قرینم انوار هدایت به سماوات و زمینم من نور مبینم زین العابدینم من نور مبینم زین العابدینم من شمس ولا و مه بی مثل و قرینم من شمس ولا و مه بی مثل و قرینم انوار هدایت به سماوات و زمینم من نور مبینم زین العابدینم من جان حسینم جانان حسینم من نور در بند اسارت چه مصائبی که ندیدم در بند اسارت چه مصائبی که ندیدم من در ره قرآن چه ستمها که کشیدم احیاگر دینم زین العابدینم من زین العابدینم من جان حسینم جانان حسینم هم از غم 72 تن ناله زنم من هم از غم 72 تن ناله زنم من هم غصه خور دل بر خونین بدن هستم همان و همینم زین العابدینم من جان حسینم من جان حسینم چون لاله سرخی که شدم نوحه گر یاس چون لاله سرخی که شدم نوحه گر یاس هم ناله ز سوز شرر امی العباس، هم ناله ز سوز شرر امی العباس. با بنینم زین العابدینم، من جان حسینم جانان حسینم، من جان حسینم جانان حسینم، من جان من جان حسینم جانان حسینم، حسینم یا زهرا یا زهرا یا زهرا یا علی یا علی یا حسن یا حسین یا حسن یا حسین حسین یا زینب یا زینب عجل الله تعالی فرجک یا مولا یا صاحب الزمان، و سیعلم الذین ظلموا ای منقلب ینقلبون. یا ابا